Watanal. The leader of this community, he was a tall and charismatic man, with a gentle yet firm voice that inspired respect and trust. The man welcomed me with a warm smile and hug. I felt an immediate bond with him, as if I could truly grasp the anguish and bewilderment he carried within. The initial meetings were rather calm. We sat in a circle, sharing our stories, absorbing the wise words of the teacher as he emphasized the significance of community, discovering our true selves and inner peace. It all sounded so comforting, so essential. For my wounded soul, I took part in my first ceremony. It was a nighttime gathering outdoors. Under the moonlight, we gathered around a bonfire as Joaquin led a series of chants and meditations. Though it felt a bit peculiar, I experienced a profound tranquility that had eluded me for quite some time. The members sang with devotion, and the atmosphere was brimming with vibrant and welcoming energy. As time passed, I began to feel more connected to the community, made friends, and started to engage more actively in daily activities. I felt at peace, part of something greater than a family that welcomed and supported me unconditionally. The issues of the outside world seemed to fade away when I was with the Joaquin group. Joaquin became a fatherly figure to me, always ready to listen, offer advice, and guidance. His words now felt like a soothing balm to my soul. He spoke of the Lord of everything, an entity that guided and protected us, teaching us to find light in darkness. Although the concept initially seemed strange to me, I began to accept it as part of our faith and practices. As time passed, several advanced members took us to a ranch outside the city to indoctrinate us. It was a remote and somewhat hidden place nestled among forests and roads. The place was welcoming, and one could feel a certain peace and tranquility. I felt it was the perfect place to leave everything behind. And so we began our life of work and cooperation. We had work and accommodation at this location, but not everything was perfect. Sometimes I noticed things that slightly troubled me. Furtive glances among the members, hushed conversations that would stop when I approached. Yet every time doubts arose, Joaquin had a reassuring response, always with an explanation that dispelled all fears. The days turned into weeks. I felt that I had finally found a place where I belonged, where I could heal and grow on my own. The group became my home, and its members my kin. I didn't know then that behind that facade of peace and harmony, there was a deep and sinister darkness. But in those early days, I was blinded by the warm light of initial charm, unable to see the shadows creeping in the darkest corners of that community. The initial charm of this group began to slowly fade, revealing a core of darkness I hadn't seen before. It all started with small changes, the rituals that were initially calm and meditative. The words of Joaquin began to grow more intense and demanding, becoming more authoritative, and his influence on us more suffocating. I remember that one particular night marked the beginning of my unease. We were gathered around the bonfire as usual, but this time, Joaquin asked us to bring meaningful personal items. We had to offer them as a sacrifice to the Shadow Lord. The harmonious atmosphere turned heavy as the night progressed. I felt a growing sense of unease, but didn't want to appear weak in front of the others. During the ritual, Joaquin started speaking in a strange language, and the group members followed him as if hypnotized. Then something changed in the air. The temperature dropped sharply and a thick mist started surrounding us. It was then that I saw for the first time the figure that Joaquin called the Shadow Lord. It was a dark presence that didn't have a physical body, but its presence could be felt everywhere. Its figure was haunting. It seemed to be made of living shadows twisting in the darkness, where the light did not reach, or faded away in such a way. Joaquin knelt before the being and commanded us to do the same. I felt fear piercing my heart as I knelt, unable to resist the pressure from others, the fear of the unknown, but above all, what that group of individuals could do who were truly influenced by that dreadful entity that I couldn't believe was actually there. Joaquin's voice turned into a scream, proclaiming the arrival of the true leader of our community, a lesser demon, an entity of darkness whom he considered his master and guide. The Lord of Shadows, according to Joaquin, imposed his own rules: not to worship other gods, not to have external beliefs, and to hear all emotions that corrupted the spirit. Worship and devotion were exclusively. Any display of love and hope or faith in something different was punished severely. The following weeks were a descent into chaos and fear. The rituals grew darker and more violent, with sacrifices of personal belongings escalating to animal sacrifices. The nighttime gatherings turned into ceremonies filled with screams and weeping. The sex leader, guided by the Lord of Shadows, demanded more from us each time. During a particularly disturbing ritual, I witnessed something unforgettable. A man in a trance state invoked a demon to appear. The dark figure reappeared, this time more tangible in reality, as a physical entity. This creature seemed to absorb the light and warmth around it, leaving a chilling coldness that penetrated to the bone. The figure moved among us, emitting chilling sounds that spread panic among the group. Just as I feared, I sensed an evil presence, a force not of this world. Joaquin was overtaken by the entity, and his behavior changed. He became unpredictable, lashing out at several members of the group, declaring that we needed to cleanse ourselves through pain and suffering. Fear consumed many of us as we witnessed the magnitude of the events unfolding. No one dared to challenge Joaquin, as his assistants, also disturbed by the belief or entity present in reality, did not know its extent. We were unsure if it was merely there as a presence or had the ability to harm us. However, if that creature did not act, the cult members praised the Oasis community. Once a peaceful sanctuary had turned into a place of terror. Violence and abuse were daily occurrences, with physical and psychological punishments escalating. Joaquin's control over us became absolute. I started planning my escape, but the fear of being discovered and punished paralyzed me. I felt like the Lord of Shadows was watching my every move, within constantly feeding on my fear. The nights were never ending, full of nightmares and visions of the being. One day, I saw something that finally made me take action. One of the women in the group tried to flee, but eventually was caught, taken before Joaquin and the being. The punishment was brutal, and we all were forced to witness it. The poor soul was beaten and finally offered as a sacrifice to that demon. The being seemed to feed on her pain and suffering in a heinous act that to this day I cannot shake from my mind. It was the horrendous sacrifice that took place in the enclosure. That's when I realized we were all in danger of a cruel fate. At night, as I slept in the community cells, I knew I had to escape no matter the cost. The evil presence that ruled the place and its representatives had created a place of madness and suffering, showing their true face. I didn't want to become their next target. Despite the lingering fear, the determination to survive and break free from that nightmare was even stronger. I began to strategize my escape with more resolve, searching for the right moment to break free from the clutches of all those lunatics. I knew it would be a race against time and the surrounding darkness. After weeks of planning and enduring the escalating horror and violence, I finally found a window to escape. I decided to do it in the dead of night when surveillance was low, and the darkness offered some protection. I gathered 2 other individuals who, like me, were terrified and willing to risk everything to leave. Ramos and Carla had both suffered heinous abuses and shared my desperation to get out of that hell. We sneaked through the shadows, slowly advancing towards the edge of the forest surrounding the compound. However, our hopes quickly crumbled just a few meters away from freedom. Covered by one of the guards before we could react, we were captured and taken back to the house, facing an even worse nightmare. We were dragged into an underground chamber that I didn't know existed until that moment. The smell was unbearable, like a mix of decay and something darker that I couldn't identify. Upon entering, I was paralyzed with horror. The walls were covered in blood and entrails, with human remains scattered on the floor. Some people were trapped in makeshift cages, looking like they were in a state of lethargy, as if they had lost the will to live. We were forced to kneel in front of a dark and macabre throne, where the sun awaited with a sadistic expression on his face. The Lord of the Shadows then appeared, an entity exuding an aura of pure evil, a shadow that seemed to revel in our fear. Joaquin began reciting a chant in that strange language, and everything inside turned into a chaos of crime. Ramos and Carla were Ganayan. They were the first to be sacrificed. Their screams left me hopeless because I would be the next. I saw how the entity fed on the pain in a corner, becoming stronger and more present in reality. It seemed that this shadowy body turned flesh knew that my turn would come soon. I felt that the end was near. Despair overwhelmed me, but just when Joaquin raised the knife to finish me off, there was a loud commotion that alerted everyone in the room. A sudden explosion made everyone drop to the ground amid screams and the sound of military boots. Soldiers burst into the room, armed and determined. They had received reports about the practices and deaths occurring in the group, and finally, an operation had been organized to dismantle the group. It was practically a miracle for me. I couldn't thank enough for what was happening. The confrontation was brutal. The soldiers fired at the cult members, and Joaquin, possessed by the Shadow Master, battled with extraordinary strength. The entity, perhaps threatened, became more aggressive, but could not withstand the force of the bullets and the determination of the soldiers. In the end, Joaquin was just another man amidst the chaos. I was freed along with the other captives. The soldiers took us out of the chamber, and upon reaching the surface, I felt the fresh air for the first time, something that seemed like years of torment. Strangely, only a few months had passed in that place, but they felt like years. We had no sense of time and space. The house was surrounded and ultimately destroyed. Joaquin was killed, struck down by bullets, but the aftermath of that night would stay with me forever. Authorities provided us with medical and psychological care, but the trauma of what was experienced was profound. Patients revealed that the cult had been operating for years, recruiting vulnerable individuals and subjecting them to atrocity. The reports would be carried out. In reality, they had been created by concerned relatives, as well as former members who had managed to escape, now living under the constant watch of my mind. Always vigilant, always fearful. But something similar might happen to me. Freedom came at a steep price, but surviving gave me a second chance to rebuild my life. Although the shadows of that place will always lurk in the darkest corners of my memory.